Chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, Gecom, Justice Claudette Singh, had been pressed by opposition-nominated commissioners to look into questions about the validity of votes and missing documents. But in a ruling she handed down to the Commission on Wednesday, Justice Singh said that those are matters for a court and not Gecom. She said it was important to distinguish between a review of Gecom's processes in effectively conducting an election and an investigation into what actually transpired during a particular election. She said Gecom can look into the effectiveness of the system that is in place to ensure that an election is carried out in accordance with the law to ascertain whether there are potential weaknesses in the system that need to be addressed. But Justice Singh said to investigate what actually transpired during the election is to determine the truth of particular claims, leading possibly to a determination of the validity of an election, and that is something that Gecom is not empowered to do. In the ruling seen by the newsroom, Justice Singh pointed to Article 163(1) of the Constitution, the supreme law of Guyana, which stipulates that the High Court has exclusive jurisdiction to determine questions relating to the validity of an election. Justice Singh said, and I quote, "Gecom is not a court of law and therefore has no authority to determine whether an election was lawfully conducted, and no such power was conferred on it under Article 162(1)(b", end quote. Opposition commissioners wanted Gecom to look into whether the names of persons who were dead or out of the country were crossed off as having voted. They also wanted Gecom to look into why documents were missing from some ballot boxes after polls closed and voting ended. In relation to the first question, which is essentially an issue of the validity of votes, Justice Singh noted that Section 98 of the Representation of the People Act, Chapter 103, calls on the Chief Election Officer to calculate the total number of valid votes of electors which have been cast for each list candidate. Justice Singh concluded that although the Chief Immigration Officer submitted a list of names or persons who were alleged to have been out of the jurisdiction on election day but yet appeared to have voted, such information cannot be regarded as established facts but can only be tendered as evidence for determination by a court of law. Regarding the 47 ballot boxes which were devoid of certain documents which ought to have been placed in the boxes by law, the validity of these claims and the consequences of whether or not they are valid are matters that can be properly ventilated by this commission. Again, she said, that is the jurisdiction of an election court where witnesses could be called, examined and cross-examined, and documents tendered.